saw on YouTube, Torre, who has been covering this trial, in my words, I'll call it kicking Puff's back in for a while now.
Okay.
One of Puff's.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Scores and Assists, where we break down the latest headlines and bring you fresh takes on everything sports and culture. From trending news to game highlights and hot debates, we've got it all. Hit the subscribe button and stay in the loop. Sean Combs was acquitted of racketeering and sex trafficking charges and found guilty on 2 lesser charges of transportation of former girlfriends for prostitution. The verdict is seen as a victory for Combs, who was cleared of the more serious charges. His defense team opted not to call witnesses before it rested. The other thing is, the judge denied bail and Combs will remain detained until his sentencing. The prosecutors said they will seek a 4 to 5 year prison sentence.
What's up? Y'all running from it. What's up?
We not running from it. You know, I was there in real time.
You and Jay-Elect.
I was there in real time. I was in the overflow room, man.
You spray baby oil on you?
No, never. But the Puff trial, the Puff verdict. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Puff verdict came down, man. The biggest charge, the RICO charge, he was found not guilty. Mm-hmm. Right?
RICO and sex trafficking found not guilty.
Yep.
And then what was he found guilty on?
The transportation for the purpose of prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, Ish. We called that one.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm. How do we feel?
Well, wait. First, describe what was the energy in the overflow
Okay,
room.
so when
we saw some footage outside the courtroom.
When the verdict came down, outside erupted. I mean, they went crazy. The people were hugging each other. Some people were crying. I didn't know what was going on. That's what I saw outside. And also when I arrived, they were having a baby oil off, like pouring baby oil on each other and dancing. This guy named Ahmad.
So they did that before the verdict got
No, the verdict came down and they started to do that.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the next
was
thing,
there a Walgreens close by, or did they just come
they brought that
they
shit
brought that
with
there.
them.
Yeah.
Pre-planned.
And you didn't.
No, I'm not. Come on, Parks. That Queens Flip. I'm not throwing no baby oil, man.
That's not helping. I'm Queens Flip.
I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. But I also represent the JBP.
That's true.
So I'm not going out there throwing baby oil on my body and doing that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's what I saw when I got there. Then my mom took me inside, and when he got denied bail, the overflow room was like, oh. They were so angry.
Put the baby oil back down.
Yeah, they was angry.
Well, how do we feel about the verdict? How do we feel about the decision made by a jury of his peers?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I feel like justice was served. I can say that now. I feel like, based off the evidence and stuff like that, based off of the facts that they presented, it wasn't a RICO charge. He got charged with the Mann Act. The Mann Act started with Jack Johnson, the boxer from back in the days. I feel like justice was served. I feel like we all can identify the type of person he is when it comes to him being in a relationship. But I just feel like some people are into freaky shit and some people are complicit into freaky shit. And it's a gray area, it's a gray line when it becomes to wanting to do it and wanting not to do it this time. And I just feel like based off the evidence, justice was served.
I think that even if they were able to prove it in some factual ways, I like that it seems like the intent of the law was taken into account here. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the intent of the law was to go after a horny individual, even if he may be an abusive monster, manipulative, all that shit. Like, I don't think that was the purpose of that law, or the sex trafficking law was not to fly prostitutes. And even if on paper it may be dead to rights,
that ain't what it was.
That's not what it was intended for.
I never even thought of it like that. I was actually shocked, to be honest. I just thought that shouts to the jury for actually being able to follow the definition of the law, because I figured that the video that was shown, the testimony, like they basically were trying him for being a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we know what we hear about the feds, so I'm thinking, damn, they got him, because they do have him at being a piece of shit. Sure. And you could taint somebody's viewpoint of you. The facts really don't matter after that, but they stuck to the facts, and the facts justify these charges. So, salute. I think the opposite of I think everybody has points, and I never
considered your point with the intent. I think that the intent is different than the factual basis.
Right.
So ICE is like they followed the law. They didn't follow the law. If they would have followed the quote unquote letter of the law, he would have got convicted. I think that they did look at the nuance of the situation,
right,
and look at the intent, and that's why he got exonerated for the trafficking charges. I don't think the RICO would have ever stuck, because I don't think Puff was operating a criminal enterprise around sex trafficking.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the Abercrombie and Fitch niggas, they got them niggas dead to rights. Like, yo, you flying people out for the purpose of selling ass to other people.
Right.
Commercially.
Right.
Puff wasn't doing that. You understand what I'm saying? So the RICO thing, I don't think would have ever stuck. I think that it was a gray area with regards to the sex trafficking piece. And again, we've read the charges up here several times. We don't have to do that. But I think that the jury did find a gray area. And I also think the jury took into account the nuance of hip hop or wealthy men or whatever the case may be, and how their lifestyles are. You know what I'm saying? And I think that justice was served. His sentencing will determine if the extent of the justice, but I think that they got it right.
Because there's no mandatory minimum.
Let's get the sentencing separately.
Yeah.
Okay. Mel, how you feeling?
I just think that, you know, for the defense, all they had to do was hope for reasonable doubt, and there just was a lot. For the jury to be listening to this, and there's a juror who's already making the rounds, you know.
That's coming.
The alternate juror or the juror?
The alternate juror.
Yeah.
I saw an alternate juror. He was already.
Yeah, he's already talking. He was basically saying that, you know, they watched video of the freak-offs, and his word that he used was, it was kind of tame. And all they did was kind of like pet each other or whatever words he used.
Sounds like a Molly party to me.
Yeah, that's kind of what he made it seem like.
And preset prosecution and defense chose different pieces of the freak off video to present. He's saying in both that we saw, it was pretty tame.
Yeah, right. I mean, like when it comes to...
It looked like consensual.
Yeah. That's what he said.
Yeah, when it comes to court cases, it's theater. Like, it's theater. Who presents the best set of, you know, who creates the best storyline and who presents the facts in a way in which the jury is convinced without reasonable doubt. And unfortunately, that wasn't done here. You know, there was just too much gray area with, you know, contradictory testimony. And so there's just so much nuance when it comes to what people understand about abuse and coercion. There's just not enough understanding to be able to make a decision based around that. You know, there's some people who can look at this and say these women were victims or these people were victims, and there's other people that don't believe that at all. And then that right there is the gray area of which we speak. And that right there is where I could see the jury walking in there and saying there's too much reasonable doubt here to convict on those particular charges.
I'm pretty interested to see how this all plays into like the celebrity boogeyman.
That's the other thing too.
Trope, you know, which probably started with like the Pizzagate and all that shit.
Yeah.
Like, we now have like footage of one of the biggest celebrity boogeymen that we've seen, and he was acquitted on it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like celebrities, I certainly get not feeling sorry for them, but I think it's also weird to just automatically assume, oh, he's rich and famous, he's doing super nefarious shit.
Well, the opposite could actually be said, you know, because let's take LA County. Every time that the celebrity goes on trial for some heinous act, Robert Blakely, was that his name? Don't worry about it. O.J. Simpson, Robert Blake, yeah, because it was Bonnie Lee Bakley. That was his wife that was murdered. Phil Spector was the first celebrity trial where a guilty verdict was issued in like 40 years. So for the most part, celebrities tend to get off. You know, there's just that wow factor of watching celebrities on, and also buying into who they are. You know, like in the case of like Puff, he's created like the soundtrack to our lives, and so there's that kind of connection that we feel with them that will, you know, that might sway our decision making, you know?
Right.
So So yeah, that was just my thoughts on it.
And the other thing, this would have set a crazy precedent.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, had he been found guilty of sex trafficking, RICO, the entertainment, just a wealthy person business would have been flipped upside down. It would open the floodgates.
It would open floodgates.
Even just like slightly rich people, like
yeah.
There's a lot of people that engage in something that could be considered sex trafficking if this were to be set as a precedent.
That's true.
You gonna say, Joe?
No, to Parks' boogeyman trope question, I wanted to say Torre, I saw on YouTube, Torre, who has been covering this trial, in my words, I'll call it kicking Puff's back in for a while now.
Okay.
One of Puff's people saw Torre outside of the courthouse. They filmed it because Torre wanted to film it, and he said, yo, I spoke to Puff. He said,
No hard feelings.
I wish you well. No hard feelings. I understand it's journalism, but I'm not focused on yesterday. We focused on moving forward and progress and yada, yada, yada. So they did that. It's on YouTube to see. Just to speak to what his state of mind may be currently.
Puffs.
Yeah, Puffs.
I'd still get a garage.
Yeah, I saw Torre too.
What'd you say?
I'd still get a garage if I were him. Just
Uber. You can't do that. You can't do that.
I think Torre would be the way farther down the list.
I know, I'm joking.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm
But
joking.
I think, if, in my opinion, I thought of something with regards to the jury selection. And I think that when the jury was initially announced and the demographic breakdown of the jury, I thought that we thought that wouldn't serve Puff well. I think, to the contrary, it served him well. I think that the fact that, because I think, how many of them were white? 9 of them, right?
that may be true. I think it was.
I think it was 9 initially, and then they kicked one of the black people off, and then after it was 10.
Okay. Regardless, it was a majority.
It was a majority.
Majority white.
Okay, it was a majority white jury. I think when we first heard the breakdown, we were like, "Damn, he's fucked. He's screwed." I think it played the total opposite. I think that we look at certain things because we are, again, connected. A lot of us are from the urban areas, all that shit, and how this stuff goes. I think a lot of times those older white people might look at a lot of things black and white. And I'm not talking about racially black and white, just black and white down the middle. And I think that when you start to see that Cassie reached out to him after she was with the dude, right? I think that played against them. You know what I'm saying? Because now it almost looks like, yo, this is consensual. This is this. If she has a new boyfriend, why would she dare reach out to him? And I think they started to look at that shit, and it opened up the gray spectrum even wider. It was already gray, but I think some of those things like that opened it up even wider.
I think a lot of people are also just freaky and like can kind of relate. Like if I had $1 billion, I'd be having sex parties too.
I'm talking about the control shit,
right?
And the coercion and all of that stuff. It's like, yo, dog, if you're being controlled and you got away from them, then why would you want to go back to a freak off? You get what I'm saying? Or again, I go back to
it's clear. I'm sorry. It's clear people didn't see her as a victim.
They didn't.
They saw her as
an accomplice,
a participant,
an accomplice,
a volunteer,
a girlfriend, just someone who, and you got to be careful with, again, real life and the internet. Anytime somebody said that on the internet, here y'all came with your fucking pitchforks signs and pitchforks, ready to kill somebody and stab somebody.
Well, I think it's fair to also say that she was a victim, obviously, of domestic violence. We saw that in the film, but was not maybe a victim. But
that's what they were trying to tie that. If we see how she was a victim of domestic violence, so all of this is true as well.
Right. But the problem with that is when it comes to domestic violence and it comes to staying in long-term relationships where there is a history of domestic violence, that's where the asterisk of coercion comes in, because people who stay in long-term domestic violence, in violent relationships, they have learned to pacify the person that they're with because they know they are under the constant threat of violence. And so when they understand how to make that person happy and their happiness equals their safety, then they're going to continue to do the things that this person wants to do.
Whether they want to or not.
Exactly. And then, you know, this also brings up the whole idea of why do people stay, or why, primarily women, why do women stay in abusive relationships? There was a lot of stuff that came up, themes that came up in this trial that people don't have enough information about, or they have very specific opinions about. And that's it.
And I think that worked against the prosecutors. I feel like a lot of old school people or older people, they're not into the new phrases and new, you know,
Agreed.
It's one way.
Well, some of these new phrases just piggyback the blame. In a weird way. It's like
but there's a lot of new
absolving someone of accountability entirely.
Even
when that's not fair.
Even with your
what I said, yo, after they broke up.
Yes.
After they left. So while you're there, cool, you might be doing whatever you got to do, right? Because you are, again, under constant threat of physical harm or emotional harm or financial harm. You got away from this situation, and now we have you on text saying, yo, let's get together. So I think in that, just in itself, it's hard for somebody to now look at you like a victim.
And it wasn't just Cassie with that point, right? Like, everybody that they called to the stand to say, hey, he's abusive, or I witnessed this, or I was around for this, they fired right back, the defense, with, did you work for him again? Did you call him again? Did you reach out again? Were you paid by him again? Like, so it wasn't just Cassie, it was everybody that they brought up there to tell the story. There was another story.
So now, to the average juror, if it comes down to this, if he's this bad, why you keep trying to be around him?
You're not a victim, you're a volunteer.
That's it. Now, why you keep coming back if he's this bad? So now I don't believe that he's this bad.
And again, listen, it's that. Again, they showed the jury these sex tapes, like we said. Niggas got eyes, like
especially if they saying, yo, when we watched it, here ain't that bad. So you told us about freak offs forever. We finally see one. It wasn't that bad.
Or we see one where you are voluntarily like, no, smack that thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Do this, do that. It's like, yo, dog, were you really being...
Like, I'm not going to say that people need a better understanding of coercion just because the jury found what they found. I think they saw enough to say or conclude the way.
Y'all wasn't coerced.
Yeah, like that part. That part I don't think is that deep. I don't know why the feds would try to. Seem like they loaded up on charges that they just wasn't able to prove.
Yeah, they overshot for sure.
And I think that they did that in hopes that he would plea out.
Absolutely.
Yo, we're going to stack the deck right here. We're going to give you 59 charges. We know 47 of them is bullshit, but we trying to scare your dumb ass into taking 7 years.
Yeah, but see, now I'm mad at how y'all showed up to my home.
That's all part of the play.
I'm mad about how y'all treated my children.
Bro, we started off saying this is all theater.
Yeah. No, it was theater, but some of us, me being one of them, thought that, hey, the feds have a 90% yada, 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 and if they're showing up this way,
it's for a reason.
They look like they know what they looking for.
The feds don't come unless they got you. That's the normal.
They're being rather aggressive, so I mean, it wasn't just
security.
Yeah, it wasn't just psychological for Puff. It was psychological for the viewing audience as well.
Which is all part of the play.
Which is all, because again, everybody says, yo, dog, the feds don't come unless they got you dead to rights.
So that's they came.
Even from the hood, that's our understanding of how they move.
That's why a lot of us were sitting there saying they got him.
Yeah.
Before we heard
all that and came away with some fucking baby oil, and that was the shtick the entire time,
bro.
Yeah. Like, and we kept waiting for them to add.
And the average person don't have enough money to fight them. You got to think about that too. Like, dog, their percentage rate is high, but most people don't have enough money to really go to war with them.
Dog,
if they sat them with no bail, that's psychological.
Certainly not legit money. Most people facing Fed cases may have a lot of money, but that shit is.
And not just that.
Somewhere.
A lot of that shit, they'll seize your assets, so you can't fight them effectively.
Yeah.
Dog, y'all pulled me away from the streets, my family, my businesses.
We're going to break you psychologically by having you sit in MDC.
Y'all drained me of my money. I
Dog.
sat there for a year. Like, I would be livid.
We just saw this with the Thug case, where his lawyer was like, I can beat them.
Same lawyer.
But we had, no, what I'm saying is,
One of them, yeah.
what I'm saying is, we saw Thug say, yo, I'm going to take the plea because at this point, I just want to go home now.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They stacked the deck
they
against
won.
you. Exactly. So they stacked the deck against you just to say, yo, take this plea. They knew they ain't having one no RICO.
Can he sue? Can he sue somebody?
Who you gonna sue?
How?
I don't fucking know.
You got found guilty.
And I'm about to say,
I don't-
you didn't. You wasn't acquitted on everything.
Yeah.
Got found guilty.
You maybe could sue somebody. I'm not sure who, but it seems like you can civilly. I think you
Even
can.
what they found me guilty of.
Who you gonna sue civilly?
The feds look.
I don't know.
The feds look stupid saying we got you on prostitution. You know how stupid the feds look. When do the feds come meddling in?
You know what my issue.
Prostitution
You know what my
case.
issue is though. Is a bigger issue is that
They called that man a sex trafficker, yo.
Bruh.
And now I start see when this happens.
Come on with-
I start to believe the other shit that was being said. Like there was a reason why all of this happened.
Yeah.
Now, if this is all y'all really had, and y'all stacked the deck to look like all of this, okay, there was a real reason y'all.
Bro, there were a bunch of rumors floating around. Like it's a ton of
now shit sounds
deeper
like-
reasoning while they're saying that this took place.
Yo, my issue with this whole thing though is that people making it seem like Puff's victory is a shot at victims, and I really have a problem with that. I don't think that with the victory takes anything away from victims, but some people are complicit in what they do, and I feel like that gray line needs to be explained and explored more. If you have the tapes and seeing the actions and the text messages, not saying somebody can't be a victim in that time, but they try to loop everyone up, victims up into one big circle and one big pot, and it shouldn't be like that.
And I'm gonna keep it a buck. Some shit niggas don't be wanting to say. If you start talking about organized crime, right, and him running the ring, she was a part of the criminal enterprise.
Oh no, people are saying that.
Like, yo, fam, if you're gonna say, let's say hypothetically, you take John Gotti, and somebody's working on behalf of John Gotti. Let's say they fear John Gotti. Cool. Cassie's working under the fear of Puff. When John Gotti goes to jail, Johnny No-Nos goes to jail too. He can't get up there and say, yo, dog, I was only doing this because my boss was making me do these things.
Unless he gets immunity
Unless he raps.
for the testimony, yeah.
Cool. So when you start talking about that, people are saying, yo, Cassie was the person booking the guests. Cassie was the person paying the guests. So now Cassie or whomever is now a part of the criminal enterprise that y'all sending Puff to jail for.
Instructing the guests. See, because again, well, maybe.
And if people got up there and testified to such.
Yeah,
but they're saying that and there's some people that's going to say that she did that under she was coerced.
And that's what I just That's what I just said.
I know, but that's where the real conversations need to be had.
But that we can't really have, because now you think about this. Dude said, yo, when he got to the door, she opened up the door naked with some heels on. I can't speak to her mental state of mind when she's doing that.
I can't either.
But factually, somebody's looking like, yo, dog, you was with the shits. You was playing. You was with the shits. And I think we can't really, again, in society.
Why is it so bad to ever to say that? I don't
because now you look like the misogynistic
because we saw the video.
That's not
That's
taking.
why.
No, you look like the misogynistic man that's not taking into account this woman's abuse and why she might have had to succumb to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which could be accurate, but the could is the part that makes you not go to jail.
Yep.
They can say drugs played a part. They can say
different views.
I have different views as well. They can say drugs play a part. They can say being in love played a part. Just wanting to please your partner, not wanting to get them upset. There's so many nuances when it comes to these things and why a person does that. I feel like if a person has a vivid memory and say I did this and they acknowledge that they did it, I feel like to put a psychological blame on it, it just takes away from the person's accountability.
I think there's no way, and now that we rehash some of the testimony, I don't see how somebody could say, yo, there was not a reasonable doubt present.
Mel, you have something to say about it, man?
No, you guys had already said it, like the domestic violence angle. I mean, like that is just, it's a pervasive an important part of this whole sordid fucking story. You know, and then from watching the video, that was not the first time, not even close. And there was a lot of testimony from other people that indicated that they had been witnesses to, you know, to him beating her. So that is, it's a major factor in this. We've come to the end, the jury's made their decision, but that is a major factor. You know, when Mark was here, he was just like, we've all known that Puff was a piece of shit for a really long time. And the shit that he should have been, maybe faced criminal charges on over the course of his 30 years in the business, he did not face charges for. He's facing charges for this shit, which.
But even that, to an extent, is media propaganda.
It's conjecture. It's
how many people really know that Puff was a piece of shit?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have heard since 1998
we heard shit.
Whatever you heard about Puff.
Yes.
That don't just etch in stone that somebody is a piece of shit for me. Like, we need more than that. We can't just keep saying everybody knew and no one did nothing. No. Everybody didn't know all the way, and everybody was not in the place or position
there's
to
also
do something about
levels of piece of shit.
But
like
being a piece of
saying that you have to be thrown into, he should have been thrown in jail years ago. Like what, for being an asshole? Like was he doing illegal things?
Exactly. Does being a piece of shit means you go to jail?
Well, I mean,
exactly, for life.
Well, for example, that video. Take that for example.
Yes.
If that had been made available 2 weeks after, he definitely would have faced criminal charges for that. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And then almost every single artist under Bad Boy, them talking about their experiences working with him and just basically how they ended up broke and he ended up rich and they've ended up destitute. But no, what I'm saying is when we're talking about calling somebody a piece of shit, there's various reasons various means in which somebody can determine you're a piece of shit. That is one of them.
But at some point, it's time to show and prove. At some point, we can't just take the conjecture and make it match.
Right, we sit there and say Puff a piece of shit for the contract shit. Y'all sound, you know my stance. Y'all signed these contracts.
You signed it.
Also, that's not a jailable thing. This is all stemming from he should have been in jail years ago, but like that's not jail worthy.
If I legally robbed somebody, I'm a piece of shit for that.
For sure.
If I took advantage of Mel's situation, Mel sleeping on somebody's couch, right? Mel can sing her ass off. I know Mel can sing her ass off. I know Mel's gonna be a star. Mel, you sleeping on somebody's couch. You want this 200 grand or not? Right? Is it predatory? Yes. Was it a piece of shit? Yeah. Is it illegal? No. Is it immoral? Maybe. But now Mel goes on to make $10 million. When I found you, you was on somebody's couch. I made $1 billion, you made $5 million, but
what I'm referring to in terms of illegality is the video. And statute of limitations, etc., and prior criminal activity
even
that nobody could prove until they saw it.
But even the video is a misdemeanor.
I was about to say, Mel, even the video, it's a domestic violence charge.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. I saw him kick this 90-pound girl on the ground, my nigga. It's horrible. Any one of us had the sister that was getting kicked on the ground, we might want the nigga's head. Yes, but for him to go spend the rest of his life in a cell behind him beating on this girl, I just think
that was going to be a tough sell.
It was going to be a tough sell.
That was going to be a tough sell.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not caping for him at all. I'm not caping for him at all. I'm just saying, dog, like we can't give a nigga life in jail because we saw, in my opinion, because we saw him.
Well, that video and his lawyers and defense acknowledging that he was an abuser played a part into him why he didn't get bail this last time. The judge, while I was in there, the judge stated that you guys admitted that he's an abuser. You guys admitted that we have video. And he said, even though the video and you guys' admittance won't play a role in my sentencing to him, you guys admitted this. So he still can pose a danger to this person and that person. I mean, I read Cassie's paper. She sent a letter to keep him in. I read it. And they passed it out to all of us. And you know, I felt that he should have gotten bail because the defense brought up 4 different cases of people that got found guilty of sex trafficking that got bail. But then the judge stated, well, there was no violence involved in that. There were no admittance of domestic abuse involved in that. So this is why he should stay in. So
I think it's a small price to pay. I think that they used the fact that he's a piece of shit and abusive and all that shit to their advantage in the court, the defendants.
Exactly.
Because they're like, listen, he's a piece of shit, but he is not that. So I think that you pay the price of staying in jail for another couple months. Like, fuck it, you know, this helped me win because...
I even think that's bullshit.
Why? I think if you tried to paint him out as a completely innocent human being, he would have had a tougher time in court.
Yeah, you'd never. You
know what I mean?
Like, I think you lose. I think you lose if you do that.
Yeah.
I think with regards to the bail situation, I think, in my theory, isn't mine, I think it'll be tested once we hear the sentencing. True. Right? I think that if this man is on camera doing all these things and we have all these testimonies doing all these things, and now Puff goes home after 6 months, because they can give him time served.
Yeah,
he can come home on probation.
It's true.
Right? And that's where I think it's leaning toward. I think he's leaning toward getting probation, some monitored stuff, some drug programs and all of that stuff, right? Cool. But if the man's sat in jail for 6 months after we laid out all this state funding, federal funding, and all of this shit, for him to only go sit for 5 or 6 months, I think that the people look crazy. So I think they gave him an additional 4 months. They're going to say, yo, he sat in jail for a year. We're going to give him time served. He served a year, go home. I think after 5 months, him only sitting, because he got locked up in September.
Well, the prosecutor...
So 7 months, I think that the everybody looks nuts.
The prosecutor and the judge, they're waiting for the conversation with probation. So once they have a conversation with probation, they're trying to speed up the trial date. The sentencing date. Yes, the sentencing date was October 3rd, but they're trying to speed it up to July. So once the prosecutor said, once they have a conversation with probation, and probation comes up with an understanding, we're willing to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Monday, right?
Yeah,
Monday. So. We shall see. You goddamn right. I heard Puff was saying, "No, I want to speak to the judge."
Yeah, I heard that too. I heard he was like, "Yo, let me talk to him."
I agree with everything you said about maybe time served is going to happen. So yeah, you got to sit in there for a year. So October.
What's the max on his charge?
10 years.
10.
27 months each charge.
No, the max is 10 years.
The max is
him though, when he's eligible. He's not eligible for 10.
Yeah, the max is 56 months, and then
because he got a clean record and all.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like first time offender, all of this type of shit.
But I think the two charges they said would, if he was to do max time for both, they would run concurrent or whatever time for both because they're kind of the same crime. So
I didn't think he was getting the bail just because now we got all this egg on our face. Now you made us look. You made us look real stupid. You made us look real dumb.
They took a major L.
We spent a lot of money. Called a lot of witnesses.
I read somewhere that usually a case like this, they would have like 2 prosecutors or 3 prosecutors. They had 6.
Yeah.
Like they went
a lot of energy, a lot of manpower on this.
There was a white guy in there, because my mom is crazy, but there was a white guy in there sitting behind us saying, "Oh yeah, look at this. Can you imagine 6 white women against this black man? Look at the Karens." And then we look at people were agreeing with him, but the people that wasn't on Puff's side were mad at him. Yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy in there.
You had absolutely nothing. Now you done exposed all my private, dirty business.
Do you think that he has a chance to sue them? Because I thought the same thing you thought.
No, he got lost.
Yeah,
no, but
lost.
Yeah, yes,
he lost.
But there's a lot of things that came out of that. If we're gonna use a psychological standpoint, right? And yo, from what I suffered from, he also has a psychological. He also could say he suffered
lost.
He didn't. Not really.
Fam, if he got found innocent, then he might be open. People look at whatever you endured as a criminal. It's par for the course. Like
you use my personal business. You expose me to the world. Not only that, you exposed me to the world. And on top of exposing me to the world, the charges that you tried to charge me with didn't warrant that. You had no proof of what you were trying to charge me with. So you don't think that he can sue over that?
Your defense proved that we were wrong in court.
Okay.
When niggas get 40 charges, again, we might only prove 2 of them.
Got it.
Yo, when you go to jail and you sleep on a hard-ass cement floor with no mat, people look at it like, yo, dog, you're in jail. You're not at the country club. You in jail.
Right.
It's supposed to be hard. You're in jail.
Got it.
So
Okay.
most people don't really have sympathy for you. I know niggas that told me they was locked up and the windows was broke. They had to sleep in their coats. Literally had to sleep in their coats. So sometimes they'll come in like, oh, yo, y'all under these conditions, we'll deduct XYZ off your time. My little cousin was locked up during COVID. People was dying during COVID in the jail. They gave some of them a little bit off their sentences, but the average citizen looks at it like, yo, fam, you're in jail. We don't have sympathy for you.
Got you.
You know a question I had about this? When they raided his crib, the one in LA, you know, they listed all the shit they found. It was assault rifles with defaced serials named. We never heard a peep about that.
Well, they said, well, I read all the weapons found were registered legal weapons.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah. Defaced serial?
Propaganda.
And that's but you get what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Also, maybe early reporting. You know what I mean? They may not have had the full information. Serial might be somewhere else.
So you throw this information out to
throw it out there to make it sound
This is what I'm.
crazy. We found drugs.
This has been a lot of theater.
People said that the baby oil had a chemical in it that would
whatever that shit was.
it was like a rape drug in the chemical.
GHB.
Bruh, all of those things that we got to sway the public opinion.